This smells like a trap. Well, this game's already better than Fiddler's Green. Are you sure you don't want to just sit in the passenger seat? There's plenty of room. I can't see when you... Yep, that's what I was afraid of. Dying Light the Beast released in September of 2025, a surprisingly quick turnaround for Techland after the 2022 Dying Light 2. It originally started out as DLC for that game, and once the scope had grown, they decided to make it a standalone title. Hang on a second, haven't I heard this story before? Dying Light the Beast might not hit the highs of Tears of the Kingdom or Silksong, but it's a stark improvement over Dying Light 2, while also being a step down from Dying Light 2 in some significant ways, sadly. If you're curious about my full thoughts on Dying Light 2, I made a 7-hour video on it recently, and while you'll have more context and possibly better understand the critique you're watching right now if you've seen the 7-hour behemoth, I'll do my best to make this as standalone as I can. For as critical as fans were with Dying Light 2, it's only fair to start the video pointing out the plethora of minor tweaks and fixes, almost all of them being a net positive to the overall experience. While Dying Light 2 went ballistic with the upgrade idea, letting you use materials to level up every single blueprint you can craft 9 times, Techland thankfully decided to pump the brakes. Decoys and lockpicks don't even have upgrade options at all, and everything else only has 4 levels. It starts at common, turns to rare, then epic, then finally legendary. Mutation samples and zombie trophies are gone too, which previously rewarded combat, and now you'll need crafting manuals, beginner, intermediate, and expert, which are now exploration rewards, being required for each respective step of the upgrade path. You can eventually craft higher rank manuals with lower rank ones, and it sort of fades into the background near the late game, but for the majority of the runtime, this feels pretty good, a satisfying and manageable level of progression. I don't think Techland learned their lesson completely though, since weapon mods, all of them, can be upgraded 3 times all the same, which feels pretty pointless, acting as another path of progression for players who are already done with the game and want to keep goofing around. I'd argue it's even less sensible in the game's current form, since New Game Plus with legend leveling isn't in the game at release, and was shown off in one of the content roadmaps. Regardless if it's already a thing by the time this video comes out, I'm very tired of big games withholding New Game Plus, putting it in later on so players come back. I don't need it in games at all. I don't routinely get excited at the prospect of losing the start from square one feeling a fresh save file presents, but especially in the case for Techland and Dying Light, this is an expected feature and should have been there day one. Speaking of the blueprints, they're now exploration rewards too. Instead of finding gadget blueprints for sale at vendors across Villador willy-nilly, only 2 are for sale, 1 at each of the 2 shops, a couple of blueprints are given out as quest rewards, some are locked behind perks on the skill tree, and the majority are placed in locations for you to find on your own once again, like in dark zones or safe zones. The map does point those out, so you'll know what's in each building ahead of time, which isn't perfect, but now there's more of a reason to go into a dark zone, to find the exclusive prize inside, usually a blueprint, sometimes clothes. On the topic of clothes, Dying Light 2 hid so many pants and shirts in locked chests, it's a wonder how half of Villador wasn't running around nude. The game showered apparel items at you, shoving it down your throat seemingly as punishment for the crime of wanting to open and loot every container you came across in a post-apocalyptic video game. Their stat boosts were negligible, and on anything hard mode or higher, they barely sold for anything either, a complete wet fart each time you engaged with a locked chest. Well, Techland didn't do away with the idea entirely. Clothes are still here, but they aren't generated endlessly. There seems to be a static number of them, placed in dark zones and other locations as unique rewards. One set even says, definitively, this is the best defensive rating out of anything, so fair enough, I'll stick with that. I still don't think we need it in the game, but I'm a single-player focused guy, and can admit this reduction in apparel items makes them more meaningful, so I'll count it. This is better. Using Survivor Sense in Dying Light 2 caused Aiden to put his weapon up, pointlessly blocking your view when scoping out the terrain, and that's not the case in Dying Light Beast. In fact, the sound effect attached is less obnoxious too, meaning it isn't as disruptive when needing to use it often, and since the controls have been changed, you can now use Survivor Sense when a bow, crossbow, or gun is equipped. In Dying Light 2, the stealth takedown working on zombies or not was based on what your level was in comparison to the level of the area. A level 4 zombie and a level 4 Aiden meant 80 Bob-80 is simply too weak to snap an infected neck. But that's not an issue for Kyle Crane. Being in an area that's a higher level doesn't affect your ability to quietly kill zombies with the button prompt. In Dying Light the Beast, cutscenes aren't strictly locked to first person. In Dying Light 2, the Aiden Bob-Aiden vision was the only camera angle. This was the case for Dying Light 1, of course, but specifically for the second game, a lot of scenes felt really stiff and lacking energy, something a third-person perspective may have helped with. Here, Kyle gets shown off now and again, making some dialogues or story beats more dynamic as a result. Both games have the main characters going into a volatile zombie rage mode, but Techland significantly improved the hit detection with your swings and swipes, in addition to fleshing it out with a skill tree and letting you control it, unleashing the higher-powered state when you want. It's no longer a mindless, groan-inducing set piece. They've balanced the crafting economy, which at the very least assures throwing knives aren't so overpowered. Before they just cost rags and scrap, two things you can find anywhere you go in the entire world, whereas now they require scrap, blades, and wires. A somewhat simple but significant difference. They were really all I ever needed to use in Dying Light 2, but in The Beast, the simple extra resource management, in addition to having a bow early on this time, among other fun tools at my disposal, yeah, I barely used them besides stealth or escaping grabs after a while. On the other end, bandages, your craftable healing item, are much easier to make in bulk, since it requires alcohol and rags, and not chamomile and honey like in Dying Light 2. I rarely ever had enough chamomile early on in 2, so this was a good change for the early game of The Beast. It does get a bit out of control though, since resin is the limiting factor for any flame weapon like Molotovs or fire arrows, meaning you won't be using your rags or alcohol as much for other things, meaning you might be able to craft, oh I don't know, 70 of them or something near the end. There aren't a dozen no-name vendors all over the map this time. There's one shop per base, a total of 2, and the person running the shop has real dialogue exchanges with Kyle. They even get their own side quest. This helps make the world you're inhabiting feel that much more alive. While encounters are still here, and they still throw you into them without your consent, notifying you if you've succeeded or failed if you're even remotely nearby, the notification of an encounter isn't an audio cue, it simply shows up on your compass. I'll take whatever I can get, this is a relief. The convoys are much better in Dying Light Beast, as not only do ammo packs actually come in handy early in the game, now that guns were a part of the vision at inception, rather than hastily added in as an update, there's a degree of cause and effect to them. The main doors to the good stuff can't be lockpicked, they require a keycard, found on one of the tougher regular zombies nearby. Sometimes you might not find the right enemy, even though you looked everywhere and killed everything. Maybe it was bugged, I don't know, but it works more than it doesn't. Even if it only adds a single step to the process, keys being used to unlock a door is my sort of jam. It's extremely simple, but it works. This also goes for a few doors found within Dark Zones. You'll have to access the valuables room through unorthodox means, and in it is a key to unlock the door from the opposite side. I mean, it doesn't happen as often as it should. Opens from the other side nonsense is more prevalent in Dark Zones, sadly. But still. Keys, yes please. Having to defeat certain infected to get the keycard rounds out these repeatable loot areas, making them feel more like an activity that has a start and end point, even if nothing gets checked off on your map. Zombies are a much bigger focus than they were in Dying Light 2. They didn't bring back the volatile nests to clear out like they had in the following expansion for Dying Light 1, but there are volatile nests for some quests and story events, and some other crazy shit I never thought I'd see Techland go for. It was rad as hell. There's also plenty of boss variants, and they're not banished to the label of encounter either, like the Black Volatile was in Dying Light 2. No, they're mandatory enemies in the story missions. Kyle has to defeat these chimeras, a super variant of a special infected, to gain more strength so he can eventually take on the big bad of the game, the Baron. All of them are at least functional as far as being an interesting boss fight with some sort of gimmick, and there were a few standouts that really offered something unique, or at the very least, put up a good enough fight to be memorable. Considering that Techland and all of their other zombie games have only produced maybe one above-average boss fight in totality, that one also being the only notable beefier zombie you ever fought full stop, yeah, having this many that were adequate to great is a huge step up. Dark Zones this time have been completely detached from the day-night cycle. In Dying Light 2, Volatiles would be in there during the day, encouraging a player to come back at night instead, when it's safer. which would mean you have to go out at night and suffer the slog of running away from Volatiles just constantly. Now it's the same day or night, no Volatiles to be seen regardless of when you go there. Cleverly, they repackaged the Howler zombie, removing them from the outside world and making them exclusive to Dark Zones instead, and now they're the thing to watch out for. They patrol around the indoor area, and if they spot you, they'll do their patented scream and the entire floor will move in for the kill. Since Techland wanted stealth to be more of a focus post Dying Light 1 anyway, this works very well with the early game, where you might be relying on the sneaking mechanics due to not having a strong offense yet. I'd also like to point out that the Howlers are in straitjackets. This is another genius repurposing. Remember in Dead Island, these straitjacket guys who acted as prototype demolishers, charging at you and, well, flying high into the sky? I commented on how silly they were, how there were so many of them on this island, and them being in straitjackets didn't really make much sense lore-wise. Well, guess what? Castor Woods, the town Dying Light the Beast takes place in, has a mental asylum in the center of it. I think more of these guys should have been inside the asylum, but even still, it's enough of an effort to not think about the logic behind these guys so much. The explanation is entirely serviceable. The Howlers being a unique threat, even if they eventually become pushovers due to the natural power scaling of Kyle Crane near the middle and end, makes Dark Zones feel that little bit different from everything else, offering another reason to engage with them. Where Dying Light 2 had a ridiculous amount of activities and tasks for Aiden to do, so much that I even made a tier list for them all, the Beast has substantially less going on. There's the safe zones, which, again, is a clever repackaging of something from the prior game, many of these being visually and functionally identical to the windmills of Dying Light 2. There's the transformer stations, which are sometimes just a zombie clearing and a flip of a switch, and others involve a cable puzzle. Not nearly as intricate as the ones found in Dying Light 2, but hey, I'm just happy they made the transition at all. And, besides the races you can do with Travis, the repeatable Dark Zone looting, and convoy looting, that's really it. The safe zones and power stations are the only open-world activities, if you don't count the side quests or collectibles, of course. The side quests are, if you can believe it, a huge step in the right direction. Some are with a few of the same characters, there's no needless 10-part fetch quest variety, although one does reach the 5 count, but it wasn't all that time-consuming, and it tried to tell a story, so fair enough. And most importantly, almost all of the quests have something going for them. Could a few of these have lived up to their potential even more? Absolutely, but what's here is pretty good. As well, the save combinations on the whole were a lot more interesting. Rarely was it spelled out for you, and a couple were genuinely interesting. One had me learn binary code, basically, and another had me counting how many of a certain object was in a hotel room. One had me investigating Town Hall, searching for room numbers based on a diary note. A lot more engaging than simply finding the code in a box. The vast majority of humans you'll come across are either enemies or are holed up in one of the two main camps of the game, meaning no longer will you be interrupted by dummy NPCs bumbling around without a care in the world, getting stung by bees and whatnot. The isolative, almost oppressive sensation of wandering through the city by your lonesome, like how it felt in Dying Light 1, is back. Finally, the open world itself is far, far better to simply exist in and explore. Icons still get placed on the map, and the binoculars are still here, but now there's treasure maps you can find, which encourage you to engage with the terrain with your own eyes, lining up the drawing with the environment, and crazy enough, they oftentimes lead you to areas that don't get labeled in any way, sometimes offering rewards like legendary weapons and equipment, and many even come with a miniature narrative attached, via the backstory diary entries and the environmental design. These were so enjoyable, they became some of my favorite moments of the entire game, and since we're done going through the list of improvements, let's dive into a few of them to show what I'm talking about. Since Dark Zone looting isn't strictly for filling your reserves up, as they now offer a tangible rare item or blueprint not found elsewhere, that'll even be checked off the map once obtained, this led me to clearing every single one I came across as I was making my way through the game, one of them being a hardware store. Inside, I found a treasure map with a note, the people who were here before me talking about spotting a cottage nearby. I had to figure out where it was on my own, using the drawing provided. When I got there, humans attacked me, and I sort of felt bad for killing them. I did look hostile, so maybe I was intruding on their home? Well, I found a diary afterwards, from the same people who wrote the treasure map note. The group found the cottage, there was someone already living in it, growing her own food. They said to kill her if she put up a fight. Well, here she is, dead. This completely flipped the narrative upside down. I thought I was in the wrong, inadvertently destroying a peaceful group of survivors, but the note retroactively justified my actions. These people suck, attacked me first, killed this woman, and would you look at that, I got myself involved in a miniature story all its own. Sure, it played out through very economical means, not even a cutscene or dialogue, but it's one I was able to participate in, a self-contained adventure that had a start and end point. A different treasure map found in a high-up safe zone led me to some nearby ruins. There was a cable in the shed neighboring it, and the hatch was guarded by zombies. I took them out, plugged in the cord, and explored the basement. Most of the doors were locked electronically, which meant the cable had to work double duty, plugging in downstairs to finally reveal this bunker's secrets. It turns out this place was used for some sort of organ harvesting operation, as we found the note detailing the orders. That's not all. I also found a legendary rifle tucked away, one I continue to use for the rest of the game. So not only did we get some unobtrusive yet disgusting backstory on this bunker and its prior inhabitants, we were also given a material reward, one not found anywhere else. This is exactly, almost word for word, what I said I wanted in my Dying Light 2 critique for the Dark Zone GRE hospitals. It's even better here, actually, as this area wasn't labeled on the map. This was strictly pointed to via the treasure scavenger hunt drawing. One could argue that because the treasure maps are most often found near activities, i.e. an icon on the map, this taints it, undermining my point, but I disagree. Those locations could have been sectioned off and lead nowhere. Go in, clear the dark zone, leave. Go up, activate the safe zone, sleep. But the idea that some of them could hint at further adventure, a quest of the player's own making, even more optional than these already optional activities, some offering worthwhile rewards such as environmental storytelling along with tangible goods that are rarer than what you'd find in apartments and dark zones? This is the rush of open-world exploration at its finest. This is what I was craving. Unique, handcrafted scenarios, even if they're not actively underway, being told through the diary notes and the surrounding environment. Figuring out what happened in this corner of the world is compelling in its own right. Simply put, these additions and changes complete the game. The treasure maps, some areas not receiving an icon, the dark zones being revamped and featuring a unique reward, it makes the open world so much more enticing to explore on your terms. You might find yourself forgetting about the main story and investigating the landscape on your own for hours on end, much like I did a few times. Even better, since these crevices and locations don't require the treasure map to be found, the recommended starting point doesn't even need to be the starting point. I never found treasure map A4, but that's the one that leads to this ventilation shaft. I had already finished the game, was going back in to hunt for some Easter eggs, and voila, I spotted the grating, hopped in, and stumbled into a bunker of sorts. Some backstory behind the place and its people, a distinctive piece of treasure and a clothing item, and, holy shit, a boon of legendary gadgets, UV light sticks. This is what these games need. I would have loved to randomly find something like this in Dying Light 2. Now, while the treasure maps were fantastic, and referencing them in the menu is convenient, the other notes not getting added to the same collection screen is confusing. Some of them reference the drawings on the note, or are so related you'd think it'd be attached to the map itself in the menu, but no. Once I had to go all the way back up this chimney to reread one of them, as I was trying to pinpoint the place it was talking about. I'd rather not have to take a picture of these with my phone as I play, since none of the other pieces of the puzzle invite that sort of pen and paper mindset. Along with that, the reset timer for the dark zones is incredibly tiny. On your map, it'll show if the dark zone has been looted recently, with a grayed out icon, and when it returns to normal, it'll be its usual orange, just with the special item checked off still. This is too much information for my liking already, but at one point I cleared the gas station for the second time while looking for gas so I could use my flamethrower more, and came back again maybe a few in-game hours later, and it was completely filled with loot and zombies again. At least Dying Light 1 waited a few in-game days before resetting the items, good lord. Techland is addicted to the never-ending game feeling though, so I should really stop complaining about it in each video, huh? Castor Woods itself is a welcome, humble approach to a Techland open world. Dead Island had 3 maps, Riptide had 2, Dying Light had 2, albeit they were much larger and more open, and Dying Light 2 also had 2, even larger than the previous game. Here, there's just one single map. Lots of open-world games slowly unlock the play space via story progression. Far Cry, Dying Light, GTA, heck, even Elden Ring does it. Dying Light the Beast is quite refreshing in that regard, only having the single map to explore without any "but wait, there's more" moments. And while the Beast's setting isn't as big as the other Dying Lights in total surface area, even the following might have it beat, where it excels is with its density. That's the fundamental difference, one of the reasons I found myself putting a couple play sessions, a few hours, into exploring one single cluster on the map when I didn't even need to be there. I just wanted to open up and unlock the safe zone in the industrial zone, which already had me smiling ear to ear with its chimney climb, and then a treasure map at the tippy top led me to investigate the buildings nearby, into a dark zone, found a different safe zone, found another treasure map, into a new dark zone, and wow, Techland likes using the word zone, huh? There's so much here, even though it's a relatively small area when eyeing it on the two-dimensional Castor Woods map. The verticality comes into play, lots of buildings to climb and leaves to fall in and such, but I think it goes to show how good an environment can be when the developers put care into every building in a given play space. An artisanal feel, opposed to the structures looking like they were just spat out of an assembly line. In Dying Light 2, rows and rows of apartment buildings, most of which you can't enter, and the ones you can are very bare bones and one note. There wasn't a whole lot of variety thrown in to make the interiors, the ones you can access, something visually distinct. I praised that first Dodger mission for having a decent dark zone to explore, and of course it did. It was a parking garage thing, a setting not seen much anywhere else in the game. Maybe if there were a few more rundown schools, police stations, courthouses, hotels, gas stations, and so on, maybe people would remember Villador more, be excited to explore it. Nope, GRE hospitals and apartments, that's the main course, dig in. There's also more to find as you're wandering around, too. There's fewer activities, of course, and no inhibitors at all, so what do I mean by more to find? Well, in addition to some collectibles like audio diaries in various formats, the charming spray paint art, which was in Dying Light 2 as well, I'll admit, and the beavers in a few key locations, which dole out some backstory of the town in a goofy way, there's something else, and it's not in the form of a collectible. Small bits of environmental storytelling, showing the results of some event that happened in this spot. Find some binoculars and blood smears which lead into this train car, and it turns out this was a hiding spot for a survivor however long ago. He must have got injured and crawled back in, and here's his final resting place. His loot being the prize to this find, including a legendary ranked gadget, is perfect. No notes, no diary entries, not tied to anything else as far as I'm aware, just a fleeting scene to discover on your own. Not that notes are always a negative for these sorts of things. There's a garage near a gas station dark zone which had a note about the power getting short-circuited, which meant the door to the office was inaccessible, so you have to go into the gas station to grab a fuse, replace it, and then the office can be entered, which has loot, including another UV bar and a military medkit. It also provided quite the scare, as once the fuse was put in, the garage door opened up unexpectedly, which caused virals to come pouring in. Since this took place for me when the sun had recently set, the chaos of it all left me in a panic, worried that Volatiles might hear the commotion and join the fray. The gas tank zombie walking in and causing even more havoc was something out of a horror movie, a melting pot of blood and dread that caused me to back into the office I unlocked and wait for the all clear. What a great time. Handcrafted events, no matter how small, are a boon for open world design. You also have your Easter eggs to find, which Techland is getting pretty good at. Platform 9 3/4, you can then walk through the wall, break down a bunch of Minecraft blocks, find gold bars, and a new consumable? Some weird magical attack explosion. There's also the bike, the insanely placed out-of-the-way bike in the woods, which starts up a time trial race. It's not exactly fair to compliment the beast specifically for these, since I didn't talk about the awesome Plants vs. Zombies or Mario level in the first game, and Dying Light 2 has its own share of Easter eggs, but even still, it adds to the Castor Woods map more stuff to uncover on your own. Slowing down and goofing off in Dying Light the Beast was surprisingly effortless, investigating stuff because you wanted to, and having a blast killing zombies in the process. It helps that it's not just a town setting either. The forest dominates the majority of the landscape, and besides the industrial zone, there's a village, some barns and fields, and a nature park of sorts, with caves you might venture into for certain quests. It's not a bad map for an open-world game, but as much as the variety with its structures is a plus, the flavor of your immediate surroundings being ideal to keep things fresh and interesting for the whole runtime, even if you decide to 100% the game, we have to admit to ourselves, Dying Light the Beast suffers from the exact same problem as the following did. The core appeal to Dying Light, compared to other zombie titles, is the parkour movement system, and yes, in Old Town you can use it to hop around rooftops, swing from monkey bars, ropes, and so on for fun or to escape from chases, but the vast majority of the map simply isn't suited for freerunning. Kyle Crane's arsenal of platforming tricks don't get put to the test when on flat land in a field or in the woods. Heck, there's rarely an opportunity to do anything else besides sprint towards your destination. Much like the following, and Dead Island I suppose, you can drive a vehicle. Here the flavor is Forester pickup trucks which respawn in certain spots. Unlike the following, however, I don't think the map suffered due to the decision to include driving. In the expansion, it felt like the oversized play space was a result of making the buggy a core feature. No, if anything, driving this time feels more like a way to make up for the lack of fast travel. It's nice that you can switch out to a third-person perspective, and the driving feels entirely serviceable, especially so given the races you can partake in, but the map isn't wumbo to the extent where finding the nearest gas guzzler is practically a requirement to play the game. I'm perfectly fine with the vehicles existing exactly as they currently do, but it's a shame there's not more opportunities for free running to take the spotlight. There's a handful of mandatory volatile chases in the story quests, so you can tell they wanted that to be something the player would have to do now and again, which is a good consideration, but it doesn't fully make up for the map not catering to their own hallmark free-running mechanics. In this sense, it's clear, Dying Light 2 wins out in the parkour space, even if the glider undermined it. The grappling hook is another downgrade, both for how little it's required and with how it handles. After putting nearly 200 hours into Dying Light 2 and becoming very familiar with its grapple hook, it was as shocking as it was disappointing that I had to basically relearn how to use the tool to find any semblance of enjoyment when using it. They overhauled the controls. Kick is no longer hold block and press A, the A button is kick. You now have to hold X to use consumable items, definitely never ate a candy bar or used a booster when trying to loot something, no siree. And they swapped the left bumper and left trigger inputs around. I can't tell you how often I try to block with left trigger and instead I'd throw a grenade or something. It's pretty awkward, and there's no way to change it back in the menu, or at least not when I played the game soon after it launched. Having to press a different button wasn't the only reason the grapple hook was giving me trouble. It seems like they tried to find the perfect marriage between Dying Light 1's grapple hook responsiveness when trying to zip you around, and the smooth swinging functionality of Dying Light 2, where you could tap the grapple hook, swing, then jump off with the jump button in Dying Light 2. In the Beast, tapping doesn't attach and stick, but yanks you forward, like it did if you double tapped it in Dying Light 2. You now have to hold the button down to activate the swing function. The main issue with this is that it's difficult to reliably know when the grapple hook will actually work. Besides watching diligently for Kyle's arm, there's not a great visual cue on whether your grapple hook will connect with the tree or building you're pointing it at. You basically have to trust that it'll work, and if it doesn't, completely reset and go again. Otherwise you might have a half-measure situation where you unpressed too early and yanked yourself forward. I went back and tested both games in the same scenarios, and with enough practice, it can feel somewhat similar. But even when you get the new controls down pat, the surrounding environment still isn't well suited for the tool in the Dying Light 2 form. Much like Spider-Man on Flatland, there's not enough to swing from, and trees are finicky at best on the first grapple, so chaining them together is a crapshoot at times. I have to imagine this was meant to work really well in the woods, with its new launch feature out of a swing, to reduce the time a player might have to run around on the ground, but it's not as fluid as I'd like. The grapple hook also isn't mandatory for practically anything. There's 1 or 2 safe zones that require it, none of them being very intricate or memorable, and as far as I can remember, nothing in the story missions have stretches where you'll need to whip it out either. There's no trapeze gauntlets as an activity like there were last time, which were good excuses for it, and it should go without saying nothing even close to what we saw with the VNC tower climb and second radio antenna in the story for Dying Light 2. This means there's less obligatory practice so as to become comfortable with the new control scheme, and it isn't involved in some of the best moments of the game. As much as I can say Dying Light Beast is better than 2, it's not because it has higher highs, it's because the lows are simply mediocre at worst, opposed to the pits of despair that is Old Villador, Waltz, Lawan, and so on. The VNC tower climb from Dying Light 2 beats out almost everything found in the Beast, due to the parkour, grapple hook, and music combining together to create a fantastic moment. On that note, literally I guess, it has to be said, the music isn't as good this time around. They brought back and got a lot of mileage out of the title theme from Dying Light 1. It now wistfully plays when you're walking around or driving. Some people may feel less immersed because of the obvious non-diegetic background track, but personally, it set the mood really well. It's a track that, as far as I'm concerned, went underutilized in the first game, and it seems they wanted to make up for it. That said, that's really the only thing soundtrack-wise the Beast has going for it. I can't gas up Dying Light 2 too much though, as while yes, it has higher highs when you factor in the VNC tower climb music, the opening prologue track, the antenna climbs, and the bottom of the GRE hospitals, and so on, it also had some of the worst aggravating songs playing on loop when in the faction hubs. I somehow, in the 7 hours, didn't mention it in the last video, but the Survivors and Peacekeepers themes were nauseating. I hated them so much. Nothing even close to that level of revulsion in Dying Light Beast, thank goodness, but also nothing that really struck a chord with me besides the title song remix that I already mentioned. You could look at a few of these arguments and conclude that Techland overcorrected from Dying Light 2, but I don't think that's the case. In fact, Dying Light the Beast is so similar to 2 in a few disappointing ways, I audibly groaned when I saw them happen. Characters still disappear, unable to walk somewhere incredibly close by. Sven says, "Follow me," so Kyle can meet Selby, and yep, I don't walk with him, he just warps over there. Okay. Even more ridiculous, there's, and I'm not fucking joking, 2 more quests where an old person is confused and you can lie to them to make them feel better or tell the truth. How are we still doing this? Techland, what the fuck is wrong with you? Is this some sick joke? Even more, the Last Wish quest essentially merges 2 of the Dying Light 2 quests together, as if you lie to the old lady, she'll say you're a terrible liar. Guys, that's exactly what the Scarf Lady said in Dying Light 2, word for fucking word.
Is it still there?
Absolutely.
You're a good man, Kyle, but a terrible liar. Oh, but at least you did it out of kindness.
Are you not enthralled by Lola's voice?
I am. That was otherworldly.
Such a compliment. You were such a dear boy. And a terrible liar. But Lola appreciates your kindness.
Is this meant to be an Easter egg? If it is, I hate it. Please, come up with more fun ideas, Techland. Stop greenlighting the same goddamn quest scenarios over and over. It's getting to the cringe-worthy stage. Thankfully, this quest specifically wasn't bad before this point, and the others in the game are decent as well, some even verging on fantastic, which I'll discuss soon. But still, fucking hell, man. Now, I could sit here and say the cable puzzles aren't nearly as complex or interesting here as they were in Dying Light 2, tallying another loss for the Beast in comparison, and while that is true, I don't blame Techland for wanting to cut those huge substations out. A smaller game requires less to do, and I don't think those were all that popular, so I understand. I'm simply happy they didn't curb the idea entirely, since that'd be quite the waste of a mechanic. They're few and far between, and act less as a brain teaser and more so a very light speed bump, but still, they're here in some shape or form, I'll take it. You could argue that the lowered emphasis on parkour combat is another way Dying Light 2 wins out. I couldn't even get the grapple yank into vault kick to work at all. How lame, right? Well, no, while I did love it in Dying Light 2, it was a way to make combat with humans more interesting, and since zombies are more of a focus and guns are back from the get-go, I'm a-okay engaging with enemies normally using weapons and tools. No suplexes or anything crazy like that here, just a normal drop kick, a kick, the air kick, smash, and the vault kick, if you happen to find yourself in that position. Well, they did add a charged kick, which is fairly goofy, so what the heck, let's count it. New move, ladies and gentlemen, new move! Funny enough, it feels like Techland went the opposite direction from Dying Light 2 with the bandits and Baron soldiers, no longer encouraging melee combat, but discouraging it. Remember that dodge move they did in 2, if you used a certain tool too much? They do it in the Beast if you simply swing your weapon. It's really random and strange. Oh well, blast them with a shotgun. It feels like Techland went back to their roots when it comes to the weapons you can wield and how they want you to engage in combat. Not Dying Light roots, but Dead Island roots. Seeing learn how to craft flamethrower in the skill tree genuinely floored me. What? I want that! Fire weapons in the Techland games have almost always been winners, and here is no exception. The grenade launcher is another one you can unlock via skill upgrades, and it was a cracking good time, I tell you what. Shock grenades in the rain, UV grenades at night with volatiles, flame grenades after a decoy. Oh yeah, baby. There's also the blade launcher, which is neat in theory, but I didn't utilize it much. Hey, maybe a detonation reference, I don't know. Besides those, you have your normal pistol, along with the revolver, a shotgun, SMG, rifle, sniper rifle, bow, and crossbow. The way you acquire the latter two is something to praise, as this time, Techland gives you the bow blueprint immediately. Remember, that was something they literally withheld from players in Dying Light 2 until meeting Lawan, essentially, which is asinine, correcting a previous wrong. The way you unlock the crossbow is leagues better too. It's tied to a side quest, and he draws attention to the reward at the outset. You know exactly why you want to help this person, since they're specifically bartering their coveted and distinct weapon for your efforts and time. You can't ask for much more. This is the ideal. We're not done the side quests yet, but this was a joy to see in the first hour or two. It made me very hopeful of things to come. I overall got a lot more use out of a lot more tools than I ever did in Dying Light 2, which is actually crazy to think about, since I also used guns more often, and used melee weapons more than in the previous game to boot. How does that work, you ask? There's a few factors at play, but they mostly boil down to 1. A heavier focus on zombies, and my interest level with killing those undead being higher due to the Dark Zone's revamp, and 2. The throwing knives, the meta of the last game, not being as efficient to craft in the hundreds at a time, nor as insanely powerful. Someone commented on my Dying Light 2 video saying, "Of course fights are easy when you cheese the game." I assume in reference to me taking down Corvus with the knives, and the many other moments I blitzed through humans with ease with a few throws. I don't really want to make it a habit of bringing up individual comments, but this one felt like a good avenue to explain something important. It's said that developers sometimes have to save players from themselves, as players, when given the chance, will optimize the fun out of a game. This isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Some games are more charming with their overpowered playstyles kept intact, but if you want people to experiment with or utilize the other mechanics or weapons and so on in the game, balance is important. It shouldn't have to be up to the player to decide whether they should deliberately avoid something because it's too good. That's not exactly fair. We're meant to be role-playing the character, so discovering ways to efficiently dispatch enemies and take less damage is supposed to be a positive experience, something we're naturally encouraged to do, seek out stronger tools and skills. Don't get me wrong, the sensation of figuring out a way of playing that annihilates the opposition can be a great time, but it comes at a cost. You could be forsaking the friction that was meant to be present during many sections of the game, or missing out on potentially more engaging ways of playing, all because the developers didn't account for X and Y, didn't realize A and B being so cheap, so strong, so quick, meant weapons C through T aren't even worth testing out. You might have even done your homework, experimented with plenty of options, but it was like the game was funneling you in that direction, and you didn't fight back. Sometimes the answer you'll hear is to simply ignore it, make the game harder for yourself with self-imposed challenges, and while that can be fun, it's certainly less ideal for a first playthrough, and not quite as immersive. At that point, you're no longer being sucked into this game world and doing whatever you can to survive, to overcome obstacles. You're accepting that you need more of a challenge, and are rejecting a mechanic, or weapon, or playstyle because you've deemed it too cheesy. I've seen arguments regarding this topic online spring up often, and at a certain point, I'm not sure what else you can say to get through to some people that, yes, the game restricting the player instead of the player restricting the player feels better. I'm pretty bluey-pilled at this point, so forgive me, but as Coco eventually realized when playing Shadowlands, rules make it fun. This is why balance patches for single-player games exist. This is why some critics might comment on builds that are seemingly too effective, since it undermines a lot of the other parts of the game. The mini chainsaws are fun in Dead Rising, but like I said in my re-review video, experimenting and eventually discovering viable alternatives for boss fights was something special, something the chainsaws were actively blocking me from. In Dying Light 2, could I have stopped using throwing knives? Yes, and I did after a while, but goddamn, they were so easy to craft, and easy to use, and so easy to kill things with. Putting the onus on the player to resist temptation, to put it bluntly, kinda sucks. Perhaps Dying Light the Beast isn't as balanced as I think, and there's the equivalent to the throwing knife somewhere buried in here I didn't stumble on, but for my money, besides bandage supplies being overabundant, the crafting and looting feels really well tuned. I think the highest number of knives I had, when I was still very early in the game without many other good blueprints, was 29? I was exploring Dark Zones, remember, so I was getting supplies, far more than I was in 2 voluntarily, and yet I couldn't craft 100 knives, or even a dozen of my favorite this time around, Molotovs. I could craft a few Molotovs, and maybe a few decoys, and combine those together to have the time of my life. I had guns, but I didn't have enough ammo to spam them non-stop, even with buying all the ammo at the shops and looting every guard after they went down. I was able to have a blast with my grenade launcher, and all the many glorious types of grenades, shock, freeze, flame, explosive, even UV for volatiles at night, but I couldn't fire mindlessly. I had to be more economical with my usage. Melee weapons didn't break as fast as I'd like, possibly the only weak link in this chain, but still, I got better weapons at a rate that didn't feel overwhelming, nor made the entire looting process trivial. Gas can be used for flamethrower fuel and filling up your car. Cans can be used for grenades for the grenade launcher, or the advanced speaker decoy. Resin can be used for Molotovs, fire arrows, or certain throwable grenades. Wiring is used for throwing knives, and a whole host of other stuff. Could it have been clearer which materials you're costing yourself elsewhere by crafting a certain item? Yes, perhaps, and the weights were given away like candy on Halloween for as much of a stockpile as I had of those. But for the most part, I almost never had an overabundance of the good thing, but a dwindling supply of many things. In fact, I used so many weapons so frequently that I actually think this game could have benefited from Dead Island's wheel system. Having only 4 equipped at a time is pretty rough for as many fun tools you're given here. I mean, I'd love to see the return of the harpoon gun from Dead Island Riptide, but what's here is already quite a lot, so I can't possibly be upset. In fact, one of the complaints I had in my Dying Light video 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, good lord, is that sure, the weapons break, but the guns didn't, so I didn't feel that natural progression from finding better guns or changing to ones I'd loot when one broke down or something. I'm not sure how Dying Light 2 guns worked all that much. I didn't go far into Jay the Bay's currency scheme, but the Beast implements something to keep up the illusion of forward momentum. Basically, every weapon in the game has a level attached, and once Kyle levels up, that axe or rifle or bow is now lagging behind. You can find a new one at your level, or you can dismantle old ones for gun parts, and enhance the ones you already have. This works for everything, Melee too, although enhancing didn't always make the weapon better, somehow. But for the most part, it was great not leaving my bow in the dust, not having the crossbow inexplicably scale along with me. The only thing I found odd was that, well, sometimes it's more efficient to craft a weapon from scratch again than it is to enhance it. I made my flamethrower at level 8, so it was stuck there for a while, being less effective than I'd like. I was saving up to get the damage numbers to skyrocket, but was always missing gun parts. 10 is a very large number for that rare resource. Then I realized, wait, I can't enhance this one, but I can craft an entirely new one that'll be at my current level. Okay, then. I get why you'd want to allow players to construct their newly unlocked killing machines easy, not hiding them behind a host of supplies they need to gather, and I also get making enhancements a real choice to make, not a trivial afterthought that can be done so easily. But maybe don't charge so many gun parts for these enhancements, otherwise it makes no sense to not craft another one when you get to a new level, especially if it's been a handful of levels. Speaking of the skill tree earlier, while you'll likely acquire everything near the end if you decide to do all the side content, not every player will do that, 100% the game, so it's impressive they nailed the experience gain distribution as well as they did. I maxed out near the very end of my runtime, which is terrific. Even more, the skill tree itself is better than meets the eye, because you can go 3 directions at the start of the tree, all offering very different improvements and skills for Kyle. Deciding what you want to have with you for the whole runtime versus something you'll maybe get near the middle or in the last hour of the game perhaps, is a decent decision. The parkour and combat experience going to their respective skill trees in Dying Light 1 and 2 is certainly a unique and neat facet about those games, and I wouldn't mind seeing those come back. But for the Beast specifically, all your experience being joined into a single pool, the game allowing you to place your skill points in any of the agility, power, or survival trees, makes long-term decision-making more likely, causing me to think hard on which avenue to go down. I love that the flamethrower and grenade launcher are dangling right there, meanwhile genuinely practical skills like active landing, head stomp, and enemy jump are on the other branches. It might sound silly, but I was all for it this time. I was also all for us finally having the slide move unlocked at the start. Holy shit, I've been talking about this for years. In fact, a whole host of Kyle's skills are already there at the outset, including ledge kill, and look at that, because it was already something I had access to, I found myself in the right position randomly early on in the game, and did it. 180 hours in Dying Light 2, no ledge kill, 3 hours of Dying Light the Beast, ledge kill. Inconceivable. This all muddies the waters though, since I can't tell if allowing players to have certain abilities like the slide from the get-go is a positive decision in and of itself, or if it's a product of the beast being a much smaller in-scope game, jump-starting the player to make the pacing feel better. Either way, it's nice that it only takes 15 levels to unlock everything, each level up feels more significant because of it, and I'm glad we had so many of these moves unlocked at the beginning, so the results are a net positive, but the reasoning is up in the air. We'll have to see what Techland decides to do for Dying Light 3 or Dying Light the Beast Mobile Gundam or something. The way you simply gain health and stamina each time you level up was a relief to see, especially because stamina really only affects combat for the most part. Techland altering Dying Light 2's stamina system, removing it from climbing, meant the decision to upgrade stamina or health becomes a lot less meaningful, and certain obstacles don't even exist any longer. Roadblocks that were put in place won't register as roadblocks at all without the early game limitation. I still don't quite understand it, but some theorized that they wanted to make the Dying Light games feel more uniform with climbing. If only Dying Light 2 had it, then yeah, I don't know. Since the beast wasn't designed around the idea of stamina being integral to climbing, this is fine. There's a lot more mandatory cliff and ledge ascensions this time around, where you'll jump for handholds in walls and maneuver yourself around the structure or make your way up a cliff. I feel like Techland took the climbing is fun praise a little too literally though, as while these sections aren't bad or anything, they show up so often that you start to wonder how much fun we're meant to be having with them. These aren't as tense or interesting as figuring out the right way to reach the top of the antennas in Dying Light 1, these feel more like playing Assassin's Creed or Uncharted in first-person mode, and as far as I'm concerned, the third-person perspective makes the process in those games more enjoyable, as you're able to see the full picture as you go. That could easily be a positive for some people though, being limited in the moment, but seeing it through Kyle's eyes beforehand, tracking from the ground floor which handholds to go for, which path you'll need to take, and then go for it when you're ready. I suppose it's a horse apiece, really. Another miscellaneous talking point that I can't not bring up, you can loot and stockpile candy bars and drinks, which act as healing items when you decide to use them, granting a very minuscule amount of health. This almost feels like a compromise of sorts, as Dead Island and Dying Light had energy drinks and candy bars respectively, which healed you right then and there. In the Beast, you can find dried meats and drinks and so on, but you don't consume them automatically, you store them for later, being a consumable item in and of itself. Given that healing bandages are so simple to craft, and they're much better at the outset even at level 1, they don't take as long to use, their legendary rank variation healing almost immediately, I'm not sure I see the point of the snacks and drinks, but it doesn't really harm the game, so whatever. The rage system is decent, but if it were removed, I wouldn't exactly be losing sleep over it. If it means I don't have to see the main character get seizures all game long, and be subjected to boring mandatory rage mode set pieces, I'll take it, I suppose. You can throw around big objects like rocks, and do some powerful attacks once you unlock the skills, but it's nothing all that crazy. My favorite part about it is when Kyle randomly decides to punch a hole through someone's chest or tear their head off. Again, you just press the right trigger over and over, but sometimes he chooses to go a little bit more bananas. You can also perform finishers with the elite zombies, and even though it's the same animation each time for each respective infected, it's a pretty cool visual. The one for the goon I saw the most often, but man, when you get to stomp a Volatile's head in, come on, that feels pretty great. Now, as powerful as this looks, don't get too excited about your new strength. Kyle in Rage Mode is no match against even 2 Volatiles sometimes. I figured it would be a smart way to save yourself during a chase, but good lord that's not the case. They wipe the floor with you. The visuals of the game are a treat, especially when it rains. Honestly, even when just isolating this one moment when it downpours, this is better than anything found in Dying Light 2. It's so atmospheric. As a whole, the wood setting might not be ideal for parkour, but to exist in and look around? Yeah, not bad. You can even climb that monument in the center of the map and have a gander.
One day I'm gonna do this and end up landing on a bag of rusty knives, I just know it.
The character models look far better. They don't have whatever filter or plasticky texture the Dying Light 2 ones had. Along with the vendors being humans that have real character put into them, the NPCs in the home bases have some voice lines that were more interesting than most of what I heard in Dying Light 2.
Fucking prick. Sure, just blow your head off. You're not going to be the one doing the cleaning, right? Here I am, pulling this asshole's brain out of the fucking joints.
Spare me.
Egoists should take a rope and go outside instead.
Put yourself in his shoes, though.
His shoes. He literally put me on his friggin' brain.
The world feels more alive, even if a few of the issues from Dying Light 2 are still present. Along with nighttime being less mandatory this time around, with the lack of nighttime-only activities and quests, it's once again as dark and scary as it was in Dying Light 1. The sequel did eventually make it darker when out at night, but even still, the beast has it beat by a long shot. They gave the Volatiles new audio cues for when they notice you, and I have to say, this works so well with what nighttime is meant to be in these games. It's such a perfect sound effect for them that when writing this, I can't even picture in my head what it was before. It's distinctly a horror type of noise, with the strings meant to enhance the visuals on screen, but it's so staccato and sudden that it can provide a scare in and of itself, yet it lingers, as if reverberating off the walls, ringing in your mind long after. The knowledge that a volatile might know where you are is already meant to be stressful, but the piercing dagger of an audio cue diving into your eardrums makes it even more haunting than it was in the previous games. Great work, Techland. This isn't even something I would have thought to recommend tweaking, but it definitely did its job to be scary, while also giving the beast some unique flavor when it comes to nighttime. The Volatiles behave similar to what you'd expect from Dying Light 2, everywhere in ludicrous numbers, and no mini-map for millennial-age Dorkaxe. Therefore, yeah, I'll sleep anytime I can to play during the daytime. I didn't do much testing with their movements, besides that one night where I couldn't reach the safe zone I was trying to activate and just clung to the bars until dawn hit. Yep, I got to see them walk around quite a lot in this position, none of them having any idea I was above them. From what I can tell, it's the same spawning, same pathing, same everything. At least they look grosser again, I suppose. I've already gone over in depth why the pathing and spawning of the Volatiles isn't to my liking in the last video, so I won't waste your time. The only thing I did test again was where they went at dawn, and they seem to run into the woods faster than you can sprint, which lets them get out of your range and despawn. Given that they don't show up in any of the dark zones this time, and we see a few nests up close in some quests, it's not hard to come up with a headcanon reason for why they're going where they're going. They're running to their hideouts in the mountains or caves or something. Why not? It works. Let's go to lunch. That said, I can't lie, I was a little disappointed we never got any volatile nest clearings. The biomes are chilling and atmospheric, everything I would have wanted in the quest they show up in, but given how this feels like the following 2.0 in many ways, I would have loved a handful to venture through on my own. You can spot some red stringy gooey shit now and again, and I thought maybe this is where the Volatiles would be, a small hive, but no. I love that 2 horror-themed games that released in September of 2025 both feature red gooey plant shit all over. Silent Hill F and Dying Light the Beast double feature. Seriously though, I've seen people discuss these things online, and the tutorial for the bolter mentions hives, so maybe this is something and the game is sometimes bugged. I came back at night, even after my playthrough was finished, to see if anything would happen, and it didn't. If this is a thing in the game, they should have made them more frequent, and possibly fixed how they function during the day or near dusk. That's sort of the problem with reviewing this game so early though, since, well, it's a Techland creation, meaning they'll keep updating it for years, potentially invalidating half of my arguments. Maybe if you're viewing this video in 2027, these hives are a really cool addition to the game, and I missed it by being a beta tester of sorts. Something in the developer blogs they keep doing, hinting at what's to come, caught my eye, and it's sort of indicative of how utterly ridiculous Techland are with how they develop their games. In the content roadmap update, they talk about implementing a nightmare mode, and specifically talk about the AI of the Volatiles. They said, and I quote, "On top of that, we're also considering some neat tweaks to our volatile enemies. These are just intentions, so I don't want to promise too much, but we're looking at games like Alien Isolation or Resident Evil 3 Nemesis for inspiration," unquote. I'm sorry, you're looking at some of the most iconic Predator-Prey survival horror games of all time as inspiration for your update to the volatile AI for a new, harder difficulty mode? RE3 and Alien Isolation were literally built around the idea of these creatures chasing you. That's a part of their core identity, and Techland are throwing out essentially brainstorming sessions for everyone to read. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if our game looked fundamentally different? I mean, maybe, but surely such lofty ambitions should be saved for a future game, not haphazardly applied to your existing product? This is what I was talking about with Dying Light 2 and the removal of stamina for climbing. It just doesn't seem like Techland can stick to a core vision and refine it with small fixes. They keep chasing the pie in the sky, adding or removing things at the behest of whatever the fans ask for that week. For all I know, they'll do a great job with implementing Nemesis-like set pieces, somehow, in an open-world game with the Volatiles. Good luck with that. And I'll look foolish in a couple of years, but I sincerely doubt it. Anyway, let's continue with the Special Infected. I've mentioned the Howlers and the Dark Zones, but there's a few other ways where they modified the zombie types. The Charger, in addition to looking different, gets dazed if you dodge him enough times. This lessens the need for you to position yourself in front of a flush, flat wall, which was sometimes a hassle. The Leaping Biters aren't here, and instead they kept that move with the Banshee exclusively. It gives these gals more room to shine. I've had a few moments early on where they were a genuine threat, harassing me enough to consider fleeing the situation. The Exploders have even more leeway on their death blow. You can kick and easily step back in time. The Spitters having arcs for their shots to hit you behind walls or buildings, along with their gaseous poison effect, makes them deadly and something to focus on, yet still fair. In a couple of substations and safe zones, these guys are placed in very strategic spots, shaping the battle with their high ground fire. The Revenants are essentially absent from the game, save for one encounter and a side quest. This is probably for the best. I'd rather them remove an enemy variant if they couldn't find a way to fit it in, and the game has enough going on as it is, so yes, no issue with them being practically exclusive to Dying Light 2 as of now. The Chimera fights are a highlight of Dying Light Beast. I know many fans of these games don't particularly want zombified boss encounters, but I'm such a sucker for boss fights, I really am, and this is basically exactly what I was hoping for. Well, there's still no Queen Volatile, that's the ultimate dream, but there was enough to make up for that fact. I won't cover all of them, but they're all some variant of an existing Special Infected. On paper, that could sound like a negative, but there's enough to differentiate them from the usual suspects, so it doesn't feel like a higher health pooled normal zombie, in most cases. Near the end, I was pretty over-leveled, so the Matriarch, one I basically totally forgot about, went down so fast I didn't even remember what her gimmick was. The Banshee type early on, though, Mist, gave me a lot more trouble than I was expecting, and in the best way imaginable. You have to track these beasts down, and the investigation led me to this patch of land, water wrapped all around the tiny battle space. There's Fog, she summons more biters now and then, and predicting when she'd pounce, playing defensively before doing my best to go on the offensive was a great back and forth. I talked about how much I hated the final boss in Dying Light 2 for having a stalking phase, but it really felt like this was how this zombie operated, how she hunted, her only way to even the odds. It did help that I was at a very low level without much stamina, and hardly any tools or weapons, my axe not doing much damage with each swing. The feeling of doing what I can with what little I have is exhilarating when done well, and here, it was. The finishing blow was cathartic, as Kyle yanked at her leg and just... well, yeah. This might be the best execution I've seen in a Dying Light game, holy shit. Each Chimera gets a unique flourish like this, but I can't pretend they're well utilized. When I had much better gear later on, I kept forgetting to slow down near the end of their health pool, would swing one time too many, and missed out on a potentially cool execution. I'd almost rather the X button prompt be mandatory, make them invulnerable when they reach 1 HP to assure we get to see it. To avoid a player possibly dying when they should have won the day due to the damage negation, have the boss stagger, limp, or drop to a crawl, allowing a player to close the distance and reliably trigger the unique celebratory death animation. I'm not sure if all of them are worth it, or distinct among similar variants, but it's a shame I missed an opportunity to see them all the same. My favorite Chimera was the camouflaged Volatile, the Wraith. The mission itself was to venture into a hive to fetch some magical juice. A Chimera encounter wasn't something I was planning for, and out of nowhere, this unique boss fight got dropped on my head. The solution is pretty straightforward in retrospect, but at the time, I felt clever for figuring out that using the UV flashlight makes him visible for a brief window. It was fun while it lasted, but it is over pretty quickly. Admittedly, all of these Chimeras only really have 1 or 2 gimmicks to them. They aren't standout boss fights in the grand scheme of video games as a whole, but they're a step up from nothing, almost nothing, button prompt rise fight, a single decent boss, and the worst boss in video game history, so yeah, I'll give Techland credit. I think a worry, perhaps for Techland and their fanbase, is that boss fights can feel too gamey, too arcade-like, when there's more effort put in to make each encounter special, but I feel like this is closer to a decent balance between grounded and outlandish. They could push further as far as I'm concerned, but even if this is where they want to settle, I'll take what I can get. The side quests of Dying Light Beast aren't quite up to the quality of, say, Oblivion, Cyberpunk, or Majora's Mask or anything, but they're competent this time, a significant step up from Dying Light 2, and honestly probably better on average than Dying Light 1. Dying Light 1 had a lot of fluff thrown in there to keep the objective numbers high for co-op players, and with the activities and dark zones already offering a self-evident reason to go in and clear them out on your own, maybe they thought the side quests don't need to be a simple fetching of someone's glasses or cookbook or goon blood. None of them cause change to the world, and there's only one or two that you could claim use characters from the main story, such as Selby. Practically all of them are people who simply hang out in the two bases of the game, but still, the content on offer ranges from decent to excellent. Starchild has the best 2 side quests in the game, an unsurprising take for anyone who's played Dying Light Beast. At first blush, he doesn't appear to offer much, since he initially tells you to go fetch some things. Oh boy, my favorite. Except, this is a great example of what fetch quests could and should be. It's just like what Barnacle Boy said when SpongeBob had the conch signal.
Alright, okay, you can
send me on fetch quests
every once in a while. Just give us something to do when we show up!
Yay!
Book Club in Dying Light 2 was the opposite of this. It was always run-down apartments, and the books were just right there. Here, in the Beast, you can trust that when someone asks for a thing to be fetched, or says to go somewhere across the map, it's almost always worthwhile. A decent either-or choice, a unique scenario, or a heartfelt reminder to take a break now and again. Starchild needs blood from recently infected, and some bark from a specific tree. Well, here we get some backstory on a recent tragic event. All of these recently infected people chose to stay in this basement and turn together, instead of endangering everyone else. And for the other item, we get a grim indication on what's to come of this Haran zombie virus. The virus seems to be trying to infect other living things, and this tree is one of its first victims. Kyle plunges a knife into it, and blood spills out.
What the fuck?
He pulls the bark off, and the tree screams in agony, summoning zombies to fight you, forcing you to escape the woods. Starchild says he doesn't understand either, but the infected go to that tree to die off. Even if this is all this quest was, return with these 2 items and that's it, it'd already be better than almost everything in Dying Light 2. The landmarks we're told to run to both contain compelling backstories, making you think about the setting in a different way. However, there is more to this quest, and it's something I really didn't think I'd see. Crane gets thrusted into a drug-induced hallucination, not beating these Far Cry copycat allegations, are we, Techland? And in here, we see not a refusal to acknowledge Crane's backstory, but a hard look at it, the game pushing Kyle's nose and the fact that wherever he goes, the people around him die. This is our protagonist's inner psyche, his insecurities, his regrets, his guilt. He's lost so many years of his life being a test rat with the Baron, and this could be a way to lampshade the absurd time difference between Dying Light 1 and the Beast. But it worked. I felt Kyle's pain. He thinks he's a murderer, and he's even worried the same things will happen with his new friends, Olivia turning just like Jade did. And at the perfect moment, I turned around and saw Jade. This moment was the closest I've ever been to being scared by a Dying Light game. I won't argue the semantics of it being in the survival horror genre or not, but it always seemed like a cheesy trope-filled zombie action game with horror elements at night. This, though, walking down this hallway made me anxious. Seeing Jade freaked me out. I had no idea what was going to happen in this hallway. For all I know, Jade could have been a ghost and broke out of the window to attack me. All bets are off with hallucination sequences. At the end of this, you fight a Revenant, the only one in the game, and if this is all that it was, I might have been a bit underwhelmed, but it's not. He's backed by an overwhelming number of Kyle Cranes. Kyle has been battling himself in his head for so long, and it becomes a reality in this nightmare of his own making. We're seeing him literally beat himself senseless. The arena is uniquely creepy, and the fight isn't something exceptional on a mechanical basis, but since everything else is so outstanding, the overall encounter is incredibly engaging and memorable. Believe it or not, Starchild's second quest is just as interesting. He says there's been a problem with the telepathy waves, there's a block somewhere preventing communication. You go check on what's causing it and come across something you haven't seen in a Dying Light game before. This is also connected to the events we've heard about already. Not everyone agreed to lock themselves in that basement as they were destined to turn into a biter. A mother and her 20-year-old son ran off on their own. You start to hear another voice in your head besides Starchild. It's reaching out for help.
Need your help. They're attacking me.
You slaughter all the Baron guards, like the entity asked of you. Sure, those are the bad guys, of course. And you're eventually beckoned inside. The voice says the infected won't harm you, don't worry. It keeps referring to itself as we, which is a worrying sign that perhaps you're dealing with some sort of hive mind.
We won't hurt you. Come to us.
On the way in, you come across a radio from one of the Baron's men. They were planning on blowing up this tunnel. Holy shit, this must have been serious if even the Baron didn't want to exploit this for his own gains. You finally step into the belly of the beast, and it's just a disgusting miasma of corpses, blood, a web of infected and disease. The person in the middle of all of it is the son, Rick. He fights back at the hive mind controlling him just enough to explain that he thought he could enter the minds of the infected and control them. It got too much for him, and the infected turned the tables on him. It's unclear if this swarm entity is a being of its own, or if this is a window into the thought processes of the zombies. They're all a collective, and this is a vocalization of what's been going on internally the entire time. If it's the latter, holy shit, this is fucking incredible. This both changes how we think about zombies in previous games, while also setting future titles up for success to build off this point. Honestly, even if that's not what it is, and this is a separate swarm hive mind being that somehow came into existence, it's terrifying on its own. Rick speaks long enough to beg Kyle to shoot him in the face. We oblige.
Thank you.
We spent so long walking through this place in peace, and now we have to rush out, sprinting towards the entrance while planting the bombs we grabbed from the Baron's guards. If you know how much I love escape sequences, you know this is right up my alley. There's only a single volatile from the looks of it, which is, in a way, disappointing, but given how much trouble I personally had running and placing the explosives, maybe this was for the best. Can you see how much these two side quests complement the game as a whole? The Dying Light universe now feels a lot more fascinating with these inclusions. The locations, visuals, and objectives as a whole are worthwhile and engaging in the short term, but the virus itself now seems much more nuanced and open for compelling ideas in the long term. Dying Light 3 could really run with some of these implications, and this is exactly the sort of shit I wanted to see from the next Dying Light. While not all of the side quests match up to Starchild's, they're worth their salt in some shape or form. Hunting Yaga, Deadbeats, the Cable Guy, and the Fast and the Fortunate all provide the player with a unique reward. A crossbow, the best decoy craftable blueprint, the remote that activates the traps, and a craftable vehicle repair kit, respectively. A handful of other ones offer choices, and initially, I was hesitant given how Dying Light 2 dropped the ball so hard with this idea, but they all seem reasonable. Well, except for the lie option for the Dementia Lady. I'm so tired of that choice popping up in these games. I don't know what happens if you pick the opposite choice in these, since I didn't do a second playthrough, but these feel more personal, reflecting Kyle as a character, and you as a player in some respects. In Hunting Yaga, you get a choice of letting a scientist who worked for the Baron go, taking the bribe, or killing him right then and there. It was Max's request that you track him down and end his life, since he was associated with the death of Max's wife. Apparently most people chose to kill him. I searched through many YouTube videos to see what happens if you take the bribe, and in that route, you don't have to fight the guards afterwards, so thankfully it's different enough to at least pretend to have ramifications. Why not? Personally, the outcome being adequately different isn't even the important part here. This either-or represents where Kyle's head is at, and both choices can be rationalized. Fuck everyone working with the Baron, right? Well, Olivia has been helping you out, she aided in your escape, and she worked for the Baron. If this was the only choice like this, it'd simply be okay. But there's another. Selby is one of the exiles that lived in the mountains. She was experimented on just like Crane was, like all of these people the Town Hall shoot away were, and naturally harbors resentment. At one point, in a different side quest, you find and agree to help one of the Baron's scientists, Lucy, who was seemingly stranded and left to die. On your journey to fetch the supplies, Selby questions why you're helping her, and eventually asks if the woman had a certain tattoo. She does. Uh-oh. After you finally load up the supplies, Selby calls again, and says she'll go help Lucy on her own, don't bother coming.
Just don't fucking go there, okay?
Uh-oh. You then have to race back to the house within the time limit, a fun objective that shows up now and then in the game, and when you arrive, you're given a choice. leave the room and let Selby get her revenge on the person who tortured her, or talk Selby out of it, put an end to this cycle of death. Again, I can understand how a person could justify either decision. Can people change? If you're more hopeful than I am, you might say yes, but personally, I just didn't buy it. Lucy worked for the Baron for how many years? How many experiments did she do on people? Yeah, Selby, I'll let you handle it.
I guess I better get going.
What?
Close the door on your way out.
You're fucking crazy now, please!
Selby isn't all that happy when it's done, and when you talk to her back in the camp later on, she doesn't even want to talk to Crane. Honestly, I wish they did something different with this. I wanted Selby and Crane to have a real talk. Kyle could have genuinely given some good advice on what it means to take a life and live with it, but Selby wants space, and you never get to hear from her again. Pretty frustrating. Either way, this decision is tied to the events of the story, and connects to a player's headspace, regardless if they're role-playing as Kyle Crane or not. I could see someone sparing the first guy, but allowing Selby to make her own mistakes, saving both, killing both, or executing Scientist 66, and later realizing it was the wrong way to go. Now, admittedly, the first choice you'll come across, if you do every side quest when they're available to you, isn't good. It's that stupid old man has memory problems shit I mentioned earlier, but the quest itself isn't bad, as we're tasked to go into a volatile nest and destroy it. We have to climb around, stealthily avoiding volatiles to make sure the explosives are all hooked up. Then you explode the nest. This was awesome to see so early in the game, if only for the setting and the focus on zombies. There's a different quest where I thought a choice would have been appropriate, but there wasn't one. In Killing Streak, the vendor from the town hall has you help him out, some of their people keep dying, and it turns out to be a lot more than random bandits. Doug downplays it each time, and it eventually culminates in the discovery of a group of people who were denied supplies from the town hall. Lots of backstory notes here that shed light on the situation, and Doug explains that both sides did horrible things to each other back and forth, who can say who started what, but now it's over. This sort of feels like we were dropped into a certain country that always has a big conflict going on, and we slaughter the remnants of the losing party simply because we were told to do it. It's a throwback to the Dead Island days, where you're meant to shut up and execute the orders without thinking. Got it, quest giver. Murder mode activated. At least the library was a nice setting for a trap, with the humans and zombies rushing in after the alarm went off. There's one more side quest that I wanted to mention, but it's not one that features a choice, nor does it give you a blueprint or weapon as compensation. It's just a really interesting concept. It's called Hydro Puzzle. You have to figure out why the water isn't working like it should for the town. You go to a few places, see some schematics, try this, try that, find dead end after dead end, until you check a specific pressure gauge and see that it is working, but there's a clanking noise.
I'm done checking these pressure gauges.
Kai, still there?
Yeah, there's a clanging noise coming from below.
It's rhythmic, as if someone or something is deliberately causing the sound. You have to follow the yellow pipe, follow the clanking, to the source and figure out what's going on. There's even a wandering volatile down here, which could have been utilized better all things considered. His pathing didn't really make it hard to avoid him, but still, it was neat. After defeating a lot of zombies, you find a family hiding away. The father was trying anything he could to help. He turned off the water and was banging on the pipe as an SOS message. He turns the water back on, you clear the way ahead of them, and they're all saved. Good job, mission complete. It's simple, and I would have liked the follow the noise portion to be a little more challenging and lengthier, but what's here was intriguing and fun. Overall, you could pick any one of these side quests I talked about, and if you nestled them into Dying Light 2, they'd end up being the best that game had to offer. That should tell you how much of a step up the beast is with its side content. Some last-minute things to praise before the story section: when you drive a truck and run over zombies, the windshield wipers clean the blood away. The map, when outside in the rain, has drops and trickles of water going down the edges. The physical Castor Woods map that Kyle holds is already a plus. I love a more in-world approach to showing the player where they are. It isn't on the levels of Silent Hill 2 or Indiana Jones and the Great Circle or anything, since the icons are video gamey as hell, but it's a step up from the prior games for my tastes. Finally, the menus on the whole are the best menus Techland have ever done. They're not entirely dissimilar to Dying Light 2, but they had a really gross looking background, the Villador sunset or something, I don't know. Here it's sleek and dark, and generally always clear what you're looking at, the information you'd want being displayed in a digestible manner. The story has a couple problems, but is for the most part decent enough, something you wouldn't catch me saying about a few other Techland creations. It helps that it's an extremely simple story, one of revenge, which means it doesn't need a lot of twists and turns, but that never stopped Techland before now, did it? With our perspective shifting back to Kyle, the game has to play catch-up, informing new players on his backstory and the events of game number 1, while also doing some explaining on how the hell he ended up where he did after the canonical ending to the following expansion. They show a montage of scenes from the first game, but there's two oddities that caught my attention. First of all, fucking hell, Techland really wants to make Spike a thing. Crane actually says,
And then there was Spike. He was like a brother to me.
What are you talking about? You can't retrofit a relationship onto Crane like this, Techland. It was already silly that you brought him back and ended the game with him in Dying Light 2, but here you're just lying. We got to play through and see all the events of Kyle's Haran days, unless you're claiming that between the ending of Dying Light 1 and the start of the following, Crane and Spike got super close. This is retcon nonsense. They even show Spike trying to come save Kyle in the opening. Genuinely wild stuff, but sure, congrats, you made Spike a thing. Secondly, Techland screwed up when telling Kyle's backstory, giving two contradicting explanations of his motivations back to back. In the montage, Kyle says he was a mercenary for hire, selling his skills to the highest bidder.
I was a mercenary for hire, selling my skills to the highest bidder.
Huh, I mean, that's not exactly how I viewed it, but sure, I guess that works. But then, a few minutes later, Kyle says this.
A virus was devastating the city of Haran in Turkey, turning people into undead monsters. Wanting to help, I joined an organization called the GRE that claimed they could stop the spread and save the world.
I'm sure someone could do some impressive mental gymnastics to make both of these lines work together, but going from mercenary for hire, selling my skills to the highest bidder 1 second, to once I heard about the virus I wanted to help and join the GRE the next, is a pretty big leap. Kyle says after he was turned into a volatile, he was hunted by the GRE for months, for years, and was eventually caught. Given that Spike is old like he was in Dying Light 2 when he tried to save Crane, that's a good 15 to 20 years, right? Sure, he got tortured, but look at that youthful face. Linda McMahon would kill for a face that tight. We eventually escaped the facility. The other subject they had, which we learn is Subject Beta, Crane being called Subject Alpha, got loose, and your cuffs come off. While this whole test subject sequence does explain as much as it needs to, painting a I'm the bad guy target on the Baron's face adequately well, so we can properly feel the lust for revenge that Crane feels, the prologue goes on for quite some time, and nothing much of interest happens gameplay-wise until the first Chimera fight a half hour in. These games tend to overstay their welcome in their intros, something I have to credit Dead Island for not doing, since you're on the beach relatively quickly. At least the Beast has something over every other game Techland has made, since they put the effort into making a slick, artsy cutscene showing Crane's story of becoming a volatile. This reminds me of that random cartoony scene from Dead Rising 4, and while neither game did this style of scene ever again, Dead Rising 4 dropped off a cliff and stayed there, and Dying Light the Beast stays consistently good the whole way through. Well, until it doesn't, but I'm not quite there yet. Olivia is presented as the main partner for Kyle at the onset of the game, but she eventually slides into the background, only calling now and again to tell Kyle where the next Chimera boss fight is, all the while the Sheriff, Sven, and Lydia steal the spotlight for the majority of the missions and scenes in the game. It's a bit of a shame, since Olivia's chemistry with Kyle is quite good. She helped him escape the facility, she was working there and apparently found an opportunity to make things right. She has a lot of optional dialogue in the first half of the game. You can ask her questions, and the interactions with Kyle are entertaining enough. The snazzy artsy cutscene I showed earlier was found within one of these optional dialogues. You'll notice that while there are dialogue options, which Dying Light 1 didn't have, the Beast doesn't pretend you're making decisions all the time. It simply allows you to get more information if you want it with the non-yellow selections. Now, as much as I like Dying Light the Beast and the Chimera fights, I have to admit I was more excited at the prospect of what I thought it was offering than what it actually offered. Olivia says if you want to get revenge on the Baron and his men, you need to get a lot stronger. Chimeras are horrible creatures that the Baron and his scientists have created, and after you take one down, Olivia injects its blood into you to supposedly save your life. It works, and this becomes the method to get stronger. Each Chimera has its own unique GSB, as she says, which will help Crane get more powerful to take down the Baron when he's ready. To me, this sounded a lot like an open-ended main objective, like in Breath of the Wild, where you could do however many shrines to get more health and stamina, you could do however many divine beasts to weaken Ganon, but you don't have to. It's freeform and of your own volition. I was picturing the Chimeras out in the open world somewhere, and I'd have to continue the main story while making time to take down the monstrosities roaming around to keep getting stronger. Well, no, it's not like that at all. Out of however many story quests and objectives, a quarter to a third or so are dedicated Chimera interactions. Every now and then, the Town Hall or Exiles don't require your help at the moment, and Olivia calls and says she found a new Chimera, tells you its location, and you go hunt it down. This needs to happen for the next part of the story to progress. It's like a mandatory intermission. Again, I like the Chimera fights, and hunting them down in some missions felt satisfying, but you don't have anywhere near the level of agency in this series of hunts that I was hoping for. While this game doesn't feature 2 individual maps to explore, one unlocking near the halfway point, which is a staple of the Far Cry and Dying Light games, there are 2 distinct groups of people you help out in their respective bases found in Castor Woods, and the transition between working for one instead of the other feels a lot like the middle of the game new map moment from previous entries. The problem is, the tried and true formula of let's reset and slow down is entirely unnecessary here, since there's not any new mechanics or a new environment thrown your way, and it ultimately makes Act 2 far weaker than it needed to be. What happens is you help the town hall for a while, the sheriff, the one in charge of the survivors, betrays Kyle, she goes on the run when you come back, then you're told about the telepathic survivors living in the mountain caves, and you help them for the rest of the game. I'm thankful we didn't get launched into an entirely different map, truly I am, but the game starts to drag on near the middle when working for the Exiles. We just had a standoff with the Baron, saw the Beast, saw the Sheriff betray us, and all of that gets pushed aside for a very long time while we try to get the Exiles on our side. Climb some antennas, hook up radios for them to listen in on the Baron's broadcasts, stop the Baron from blowing up the town hall, go retrieve research from the school, which involved sending back a scientist. Oh, he didn't make it back, so we gotta go find out what happened to the scientist. There's a lot of meandering around, and it's possible this was when I was focusing more on the side content, this part of the game feeling longer than it would have if I stuck with the main story, but I think if 1 or 2 of these missions were removed, the pacing would have felt a lot better. For the radio tower mission, Secrets in the Air, for example, let me walk you through how many but waits the game throws at you. Lydia, the leader of the Mushroom People, doesn't want to work with you, but Sven introduces you to Selby, and they have an idea: to crack into the Baron's radios to hear what they're up to. Okay, but here's the issue. You have to climb a really big tower.
And none of us have the skills necessary to climb all the way to the top.
Well, lucky for you, I've climbed a lot of insanely tall towers in my time.
You climb up and we're done, yes? Next part of the game? Nope, the signal is encrypted, so we need to obtain a radio from one of the Baron's men. Go to the specific place on the map where Selby pointed you to, kill Baron's men, get a radio, bring it back to Selby in the mountains. Well, it works, but it's not good enough. We'll need to tap into 2 more towers, and that's not all. Selby only had 1 transmitter, so Kyle needs to go get more transmitters so he can place them in the other 2 towers. Okay. She gives you a list of convoys where transmitters might be. The game took pity on me, I guess, since I was good to go after the first convoy I came across, and now we climb the tower, all good there, and the final one goes on the bell tower. Place that one, and now we overhear the Baron's men are going to blow up Town Hall, so we have to go stop them. What could have been such a simple task, taking 10 or 20 minutes, ended up taking a lot longer, and while I do like the objective of climbing towers, a lot of this felt like busy work to pad the runtime. Thankfully, the next few missions are in new areas, like the school and the Volatile Nest and the mental asylum. Maybe Secrets in the Air was them encouraging a player to explore this side of Castor Woods, but I didn't need any more encouragement. I was doing every dark zone and side quest I found, since they were interesting enough on their own. You don't need the fetch quest busy work crutch to force engagement when your content is good, so maybe Techland were used to their content, well, not being as good, so they were running on autopilot. As I said, the other missions for the fungi survivors were well worthwhile. In the school, at one point Baron's men charge in and begin fighting with the random bandits that took over the place. It's a war zone, one that Kyle isn't even involved in, funny enough. Staying stealthy in a cave full of volatiles to retrieve some MacGuffin blood was awesome, and Lydia, after she's gained more control of her, powers, I guess, quells every infected in the asylum, allowing you to walk by unharmed as you look for another MacGuffin. There's not much here mechanically, and no puzzles to solve or anything, but the gimmick of walking around while zombies carry on with their day, ignoring you, is sound enough on its own, an eerie yet strangely peaceful bout of exploration. This doesn't last forever though, much like with the side quest from earlier, the zombies snap out of it, and you have to escape. The chase sequence itself feels a bit awkward though, as I wanted to run out the way I came in, through the front door, but it doesn't open. Mark another door issue for Techland. Who's got bingo? This is so ridiculous. Nope, you have to go a specific route and jump out of a window? I've never broken through a window this whole game, but sure. I think there was a missed opportunity here though, since there's a good chance the player has already done the side quest with the hive mind, where Ron was trying, and failing, to get into the minds of the infected and control them, and it ended up backfiring. Kyle's reaction with Starchild makes it clear that he thinks Ron trying to control the zombies with his telepathy was a bad idea, and this is the result. Well, Kyle never mentions Ron in these moments with Lydia and the scientist, where they discuss their plans for her to tame the infected by using her mind. I feel like another set of voice lines should have been recorded here, for Kyle to push back and question it, citing the failed Ron experiment in the rail tunnel, and for them to ease Kyle's mind about it all, saying this time she'll be careful or something. It just felt like the game wasn't honoring the events of my playthrough. It's also worth noting that, while all the missions were enjoyable for what they were, all of them are fetch quests. Kyle has to go into the school to fetch research, Kyle has to go into the volatile nests to fetch blood, Kyle has to go into the asylum to fetch medicine for Lydia. Hell, you could even count fetching the scientist if you really wanted. Again, Dying Light the Beast is a good game, but Techland should really think harder about their objectives quest to quest. This is one of the reasons the early Turn the Power Back On mission was a highlight. It involves exploring a power station, doing some underwater aerobics, cable puzzles, flipping switches, and so on. At one point you drain the water and zombies repopulate the facility. The best part of the whole thing, aside from the objectives being something other than fetching, is this guy. He's about the most inept worker you've ever seen. At every turn, he practically tries to get in Crane's way or admit defeat before even trying.
And now you're as trapped as I am. You stupid pig-headed idiot.
I'm trying to help you here, moron.
You won't go down there? Have at it. It's your funeral.
Love that can-do spirit. So what am I looking for?
The turbines. They're in the main building, but I doubt you can get them going.
Just point me in the right direction. There must be a pump down here, right?
On the ground level, I think. Doubt it's working, though.
Love that optimistic attitude. Can we use that line to power up the pump or not?
Probably not.
Well, since you've been wrong about everything so far, I'm gonna look for a backup circuit.
That's your funeral.
It got to the point where I was looking forward to the next time Crane asked him a question or presented him a new problem, as I wanted to hear the sloth incarnate verbally throw his hands up in exasperation, groaning at the mere thought of doing an ounce of work.
Well, there must be a way to get water to him.
There's an auxiliary water intake, but that's probably busted too. Told you, you're wasting your time.
You are just a ray of sunshine, you know that? Hey, Largo, I'm seeing a red pipe. Is that the other water intake?
Could be. To tell you the truth, I'm kinda colorblind.
It pays off as well as you could expect. He's working for the Baron and was intentionally trying to impede your progress. Perfect. Now, I mentioned earlier I had two main problems with the story. Act 2 dragging on is a bit fatiguing, sure, but that's nothing compared to the utterly terrible sheriff betrayal. You help her and the town hall out for a few quests, then she tells you she has eyes on the Baron at the salt mine. You go in and she stays behind. You murder plenty of guards on the way, and eventually you call the sheriff to tell her you're in, and this happens.
Sheriff, you copy?
Yep. And I'm sorry, Kyle, but I need to protect my people.
After you escape, she then says this.
You're alive.
Yeah, and I'm coming for you.
I'm sorry, Kyle, but I had no choice. It was either that or...
And is AFK for the rest of the fucking game until she abruptly decides to apologize and help out again at the very end.
I owe you an apology.
Fuck that. Apology not accepted.
If I didn't give you up, he would kill not just me, but every single one of my people. It was either give up you or everyone else. It was an impossible choice.
So you made a deal with the devil?
Things are so black and white for you, but things are never that simple.
She did it to protect her people. The Baron scared her, and that's why she abandoned them for days. During that time, the Baron tried to blow up the town hall with explosives, and that's what spurred her to come back to the good side. The story then continues with the Exiles leader and the Survivors leader working with Crane along with Aiden. They obviously wanted this foursome to be a thing, but it would have worked just fine with the sheriff working with Crane the whole time. This betrayal is so pointless, and if anything, hurts the game, since you're likely thinking revenge against the sheriff is next on Kyle's objective list, but it's not. We forget about her after Jacob says she ran away, and don't even, for 1 second, think about trying to find her. Given how she slides in like nothing happened in the final act, really, what would have changed if she didn't betray Crane? You won't be visiting the town hall as much after this mission anyway. Jacob could have told us about the Exiles with or without the sheriff going AWOL. All this did was make Act 2 feel emptier than it would have otherwise, as chasing down the sheriff was an idea inserted into my brain and excised minutes later. This is to say nothing about how insanely stupid the ambush moment itself was. This was all a setup, right? So the Baron planned on a whole bunch of his guards dying, huh? Whatever, he wanted the sheriff to lure Kyle to the mines, she did. So why does she need to be there to reveal herself? She isn't important to the events on screen, she just outs herself for no reason, then aims a gun at Kyle. Obviously she assumed Kyle wouldn't live through this, that he wouldn't escape like he did, I get that, but being there makes it look like she was a bigger part of working with the Baron than she was, and her completely swapping over to join us in the final act feels entirely unearned. You could argue it was meant to build up the Baron, especially given that another betrayal happens later on with Olivia, even if it's a fake out but not really since people still died. But I'd argue it doesn't help sell the influence and power of the Baron, and it doesn't make the sheriff a more interesting character. It's a floundering nothing. Oh, you caught that a while back, huh? Yeah, Aiden Bobaden is in the game! Hey, I warned you about spoilers, man. Aiden is the titular The Beast. It's a fun twist, since you figure Kyle was the title character, or at least I did, but nope, Subject Beta is. When I saw The Beast the first time, I did verbally say, "Is that Aiden? Oh, please let that be Aiden." But again, since I'm not used to seeing Aiden's face, I wasn't sure. We eventually have a mediocre boss fight with him near the end, and I thought to myself this time, it better be Aiden and not some random guy. And sure enough, he wakes up normal again, explains who he is and what he was doing there. He and Spike came to rescue Crane, and both got captured. See, there he is. I thought he was just some random extra to help Spike or something. Not to gush too much, but seeing the two characters interact made me really happy. I don't know why, maybe Resident Evil planted the idea in my head, only for it to grow when playing through the Dead Rising franchise, but a video game series that shares a similar timeline, eventually forcing the different player characters to team up or interact in some way, is just the coolest thing ever. Devil May Cry 4 kinda did this, but it's not quite what I'm getting at. Since Nero didn't have a game to himself first, this was his game, and Dante makes an appearance during it. Frank West and Chuck Green teaming up in Case West is the ultimate example, or even the off-the-record boss fight between the two. I just love when player characters clash, and it's fun seeing which one of the two we get to control, seeing what the developers do with the other, how they communicate, and so on. Aiden and Kyle have something going for them that the other examples don't. They're under very similar circumstances, as they've both been infected and both turn into a sentient volatile of sorts when they enter their rage modes. And, you know, Aiden sounded a lot like Kyle in Dying Light 2. It's really 1A and 1B, and working with Aiden to fight the Baron was the icing on the cake. He doesn't do a whole lot in the fight, but I'll take what I can get. It certainly helps that it's a genuinely decent boss encounter, featuring two phases, one where he's a grenade launcher doofus, and one where the Baron is a mutated zombie. Boy, Techland loves ending their games with this sort of thing, huh? Better than Rise, though. The Baron feels like another attempt at recreating a Far Cry 3 villain, but at least this one is so over-the-top evil that it ends up working in the end. When it comes to creating a good antagonist in a video game, screen time, for me, is one of the most important factors at play. Rise admittedly feels like a better villain than Pagan Min from Far Cry 4, since we at least interact with Rise more than at the beginning and the end. Is his writing good, or arguments compelling, or his boss fight satisfying? No, not at all, but his presence is felt. The Baron's presence is felt in the same way Rise's was, with his men all over, and here we at least get a better rationale for the quantity of trigger-happy humans waiting to kill our protagonist. The Baron later claims that Kyle's escape was intentional, to test Subject Alpha in a wild environment. It's easy enough to explain away that he ordered his merry men to kill Kyle, knowing he'd probably survive. It was also them who lured all the chimeras we fought and set everything up, so yeah, it all connects just fine. The Baron doesn't show up as often as Rise does, only once in the middle of the game during that salt mine ambush, but given that this is such a one-dimensional plot, it doesn't harm the narrative as much as it could have. For instance, Waltz from Dying Light 2 got more screen time than the Baron, but that's a much longer game, with a story that got out of control in a hurry. Since this is a much smaller experience, the ratio feels more ideal, and because the story is far simpler this time around, it works to the game's and Techland's writing skills' benefit. The Baron is practically chewing the scenery in his interactions with Kyle, he's hamming it up as the #1 evil guy in the room, and really, when it comes down to it, this is practically all there is and needs to be for this narrative thread to work. Besides that awkward moment where the sheriff betrayal took center stage, it's always about the Baron, getting stronger through chimeras to eventually face the Baron, track the Baron's movements and plans, get research from the Baron, obtain items that'll help Lydia get more powerful to, in turn, help Kyle fight back against, you guessed it, the Baron. Because the plot is so straightforward, for the most part of course, the game as a whole doesn't feel like it's trying too hard, and in the places where it might feel like it's not trying enough, it doesn't matter much, since, again, this is a simple revenge story.
I'm gonna kill you.
After all these years, you still have some fight in you. It would be admirable if it wasn't so pathetic.
The gameplay feeds into the narrative of Kyle gearing up to get back at the Baron, and everything extra is also, in effect, helping Kyle to gear up to get back at the Baron. I won't pretend he's a hallmark example of what a villain should be, but he's so serviceable that, for a Techland game, it's quite refreshing. I mentioned Olivia's betrayal earlier, and while I was rolling my eyes when it was announced at the dinner party, and rolled my eyes even harder when she turned around and said, "I was fake betraying you, I swear," the fact that Techland actually went so far as to slit Spike's throat in front of your eyes is just insane. I don't know why, but this felt oddly personal. I had written my Dying Light 2 script a long time ago at this point, but the video itself came out after Dying Light the Beast released. Of course this wasn't aimed at me, how could it be? And yet, I remember how much I bitched about Spike in my last video, my ranting was fresh in my mind. It was as if Techland said, "Oh yeah, Dork, you don't like Spike, huh? Fine, there, he's fucking dead, are you happy now?" And while I think it's incredibly silly for us to simply go along with Olivia and trust her even though she let it get so far, to have the Baron murder our people in front of us before she made her move, I have to respect it. This was hilarious. I genuinely didn't think Techland would go this far, but they turned their cheesy sliders all the way up for the final hour, and I think it made everything in the game that much better, especially when considering how this story ends. Was Kyle Crane's slow-mo dropkick to set up the Baron for the killing blow ridiculous? Yes, and it was magical and amazing as well. Leaning into this schlock, being unashamed of going bananas, is praiseworthy. Sincerity makes all the difference with nonsense like this, and I bought in. However, that's not even the best part. The fucking GRE lady, the one who radioed Crane and gave him orders from the first Dying Light, makes an appearance in a helicopter at the very end, saying that the GRE has been working underground all these years, the Baron was one of their men until he went rogue, and it would be more beneficial for the GRE and Kyle to work together instead of against each other.
Well, you proved to be an exceptionally valuable ally. Enjoy your freedom. You've earned it.
I won't let this go. Not this time.
Leave the past where it belongs, Kyle. Focus instead on the good we can do together.
I will focus on you.
Before the title drops and the credits play, Kyle proclaims he'll go after her and the GRE next, and Lydia and Aiden come into frame. Boom. Maybe I'm alone in this, but I'm legitimately excited to see where this series goes from here. We have 2 playable characters on the table, and a telepath who can control infected with her mind, all front and center, hopefully implying that they're ready to take on what's next in this universe. The hook has been set. The GRE lady made a comeback at the end and taunted us by merely existing. We got an ending that both feels conclusive, yet opens up more possibilities, something I don't think we got from either of the two previous games. For the first time in any of Techland's zombie catalog, I felt good as the credits began to roll. I was smiling. Is this high art? No, but I never needed it to be. What started with a very grounded zombie parkour game has, apparently, morphed into a superhero action flick, Kyle and Aiden more resembling comic book characters than regular humans at this point. They teamed up to fight the big bad of the episode. Where will fate take them next? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it. Dying Light the Beast is a mixed bag. It's a stark improvement in many ways over its predecessor, yet a step down in others. The parkour really isn't all that integral to the game, the music is decent but not great, and the grappling hook once again gets put on the back burner, not particularly useful or involved in fun platforming sections. That said, zombies are once again a big focus, the skill trees and weapons to play with are better than in 2, the side quests are a huge step up, some of them being the best in the series, and it's a more concise, efficient game than the bloated mess that was Dying Light 2. Fewer things to do, but more of them are meaningful. The Chimeras are the best bosses Techland have ever produced, the Casterwoods map itself is beautiful and enticing to explore, even if it's not as good of a setting for the free-running mechanics, and the story is probably the least flawed out of the Techland zombie game catalog, which isn't saying a whole lot, but it's definitely something to congratulate. It's a game I had a great time playing, exploring the dark zones and combing the landscape for the treasure map rewards, battling the unique Chimera monsters, engulfing zombies with Molotov flames, and sending them to their doom with grenade launcher explosions. I'm not sure how replayable it is, but I had a surprisingly good time with it, and could recommend it to anyone who didn't like the direction Dying Light 2 went with things. If you loved Dying Light 1, I'm not sure I'd say this is a perfect return to form. Many things here are carried over and tweaked from Dying Light 2 after all. But if what I talked about sounds up your alley, you'll likely enjoy your stay in Castor Woods. Hopefully you enjoyed the video as well. Thanks for watching this far. I hope the quick turnaround for this critique was a welcome surprise. If you haven't yet, I'd ask that you subscribe to the channel and go check out my 7-hour Dying Light 2 critique if you haven't. I promise, it's not even close to a simple plot synopsis. I combed through that fucking game system by system. I was going to say Dead Island 2 will likely be the next video, but I really want something out for December, so probably not. That thing needs at least 2 playthroughs, I think. We'll see. Sorry, I think the zombie fatigue is starting to get to me, but it'll happen sometime. Become a member on Patreon or on YouTube for early access and monetary support. Thanks to all my current members and patrons, you're the best, and I hope to see you all soon. Have a good one.
Hey Largo, I'm seeing a red pipe. Is that the other water intake?
Could be. To tell you the truth, I'm kinda colorblind.